Welcome to the Porsche Club Insider, your one stop for all things Porsche and PCA. Here's your host, Vu Nguyen, and the Insider crew.
Welcome to episode 78. We are at PCA National Headquarters. Around the table, we have our usual cast and crew. We have Damon, Manny, myself, and of course, at the controls, we have Robert Forsyth. We have a lot to go over today because we've done a lot of car stuff in the past 48 hours.
Busy week.
Busy weekend. For myself, we kicked it off with the local car show at Mikey and Mel's, and then I got to do what is really a wonderful Chesapeake region tradition, and you've been a part of that for quite some time, Manny, and that was the Chesapeake Crab Feast.
I think Bob and Gutierrez and I have been doing this show for over 25 years. And for those listening, the show isn't really a show. It's we walk around and we pick some funny things on cars that we've noticed, and then we give funny awards. Because years ago, we did a crab feast, and they held a concours, which was kind of funny because for Maryland crabs, your hands get very dirty because there's a lot of seasoning on there, and the last thing you want to be doing is touching your car. But that's what it was, a concours, so people are rushing to prepare the cars. So over 25 years ago, we changed it to a fun type of car show. And so you first walk out, you're thinking, these cars are way too clean, they're too perfect, we're not going to find anything. But as you look inside, you always find something.
One of our members asked us, does any other region do a crab feast like this? And I don't know that I've heard of any, but it's an amazing tradition. One, because it's Maryland crabs, and the place where Ron and Linda Gordon and Ellen Beck and Bob Gutierrez get these crabs and steamed shrimp. They're delicious. They're amazing.
Yeah, you can find them pretty much anywhere here in Maryland.
Yeah, but not everyone makes them the same.
Yeah, not everyone makes them the same. There's different quality and different size crabs. And I mean, honestly, I think everybody eating that day kind of hit the wall within half an hour. There's so much
shrimp
food.
Was huge.
Yeah. And each of us are assigned either an appetizer or dessert. So then once you're done with the seafood, you go to the tent and there's tons more food to eat. And
surf and turf.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I do like what Manny and Bob do is the fun with the car show is it's not about and the people have no idea what the categories are. So I think you gave someone the dirtiest car or the car with the craziest shag carpet.
My favorite was it was an SC. It was in really good shape. It got our attention. We have beautiful interior, and it had a Clifford alarm, which got our attention.
I remember those.
But Dan McNally was one of the judges. He goes, oh my God, he goes, there's a MapQuest printed out how to get here.
People still use MapQuest.
And that's what we joked. We said, just because you have a car from the 80s doesn't mean you have to live in the 80s.
Does the MapQuest website, is that still a thing?
It must be. I think it is.
It's still a thing because he used it to get to the crab feast.
No, it was current. It wasn't. If it was old, I'm thinking you must not clean your car out because that's a decade of a piece of paper. So.
But it was current for him to use to get to the crab feast?
Yes, yeah, that's why he won the award. We were like, wow, using MapQuest, that's awesome.
That's hilarious.
So what would my car get award-wise if it were there?
Your car would get the Pigpen Award.
Okay, good. So I would have beaten that other guy you just mentioned.
If we looked inside and saw how you cut out the center console to fit the seat,
that
alone probably would have gotten the award. But see, there was somebody one time who bought a Cayenne, and they set up and they tried to win on purpose. They put this umbrella and they put stuffed animals, and I said, no, that's not the.
No.
You're not going to win if you try. It's
right.
Just that. My favorite has always been the guy with the long hood Targa, who the interior was just chewed up, and the seats were all. It needed a complete restoration of the interior, and yet he was using a sunshade. And so we looked at the car. We were like, "What is he trying to save with the sunshade? Everything's gone." And we decided he was trying to be nice to the mouse that ate his interior. And we called it the Humanitarian Award.
to give you an idea, there was a beautiful Miami Blue GT3, 1-0. It was too nice. It was too nice. So did you have anything fun going on Saturday?
Well, before you get to Saturday, we took a little trip to Raleigh-Durham.
Oh,
yeah. I know. It seems like a long time ago.
That's right.
Yeah, we flew down
on Wednesday of last week, which when you hear this, that'll be 2 Wednesdays ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we flew down, which
To
it's only like a 45-minute gate-to-gate flight. It's
As
great.
long as the pilot doesn't say we've got bad news.
Yeah, you never want to hear that from a pilot pilot or your doctor. And he came on very seriously. He goes, folks, it's your captain from the flight deck. I've got some bad news. And as soon as he said that, I took my ear pod off, and I heard something about a fuel spill.
Yeah.
I took the other ear pod off, and then I realized he was saying that a plane had to make an emergency landing ahead of us and spilled fuel, and we were being diverted to Norfolk.
You know that that doctor in Scrubs who would always start out with something that sounded really bad and then follow it up? It was like, we have a fuel leak. So, there's a fuel leak. We don't have enough fuel to circle. And you're thinking, oh gosh, so what are we going to do? So we're just going to go to Richmond.
Okay.
So
no big deal.
For a second there, I'm like, this is how it happens. A random Wednesday when you're not expecting anything, a simple 45-minute
not
flight.
enough fuel.
Luckily, by the time we landed in Norfolk, they said that the fuel spill wasn't bad, and we would refuel and then turn around and fly to Raleigh. So we were delayed only an hour. And luckily, Rhodes Scholars, which we were going to, they were only 10 minutes from the airport. Mm-hmm. So it was a quick Uber, and we.
Now, what was it? When was their facility where it had the gas explosion?
That was downtown.
That was in 2018, maybe.
I believe so. Yeah,
2018.
Several
so
years.
for
now.
those of you that don't know, luckily no one was hurt, but it was terrifying to hear that the building in which they had a part of their collection. Was, and it was, actually, I don't think the explosion was actually in their part of it, but it was the bakery or something like that next to it.
And I should say, people were hurt. A couple
people were hurt?
Yeah. And
I didn't know
in
that.
The adjacent, I think, in the coffee shop, there was 1 or 2 deaths from the explosion.
Really?
Just not in the Ingram collection.
Oh man,
Yeah, I don't think anyone from Ingram was there.
was
yet.
there. Okay.
Yeah, nobody was at the
But
collection.
people at the coffee
unfortunately.
shop. Oh, how
Yeah,
sad.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was, to see all their beautiful cars and, lives are more important, obviously, but, that to recover from something like that. Now, do they still have that collection downtown or no?
No, it sounds like I believe everything's up at this facility. Has several buildings, and
They have a shop in one, and I believe some cars in some of the others.
then they have a whole separate building where the collection houses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but lives lost is a horrible thing. But with some hard work, a lot of the cars that were in the Ingram collection, were totally destroyed. But a few weren't so destroyed, and where they couldn't come back. And that 904 actually that we were filming, that was one of the cars in the building.
It was. Oh,
It was one of the cars in the building, and they restored it pretty soon after. And I remember at Chesapeake Challenge several years ago, Cam came and gave a presentation on how that was restored, and it looks brand new now.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how you have to go find for that metallic flake. You have to find the right fish scale.
Yeah.
So you're searching the globe for fish scales to mix into the paint.
Wow.
And the body's essentially glued to the frame, so they had to go find the original adhesive to keep everything as original as possible. So,
Right.
Yeah, it was quite an undertaking. But I
If
believe
I'm
they
not-
won Pebble
I was
Beach
about to
with
say,
the
if I'm
car.
not mistaken, a year later after the
Either
incident.
won or got second. I forget exactly which one.
Well,
But it
kudos
was
up
up
for
there.
coming back. So what did you guys go down there for again?
So we finished up filming for a video that'll be coming out in September, the week of Rennsport. The theme being Giant Killer to Giant.
Right.
Porsches from first Le Mans win to winning overall in 1970. And Cam Ingram is such an expert. I think Manny would agree on all of Porsche's historical cars, but we were focusing on post 356 SL. So starting with the 550 and going, we covered the 911R, sort of an outlier since I don't believe it ran at Le Mans, but all those prototypes up through 67.
Yeah, it was obviously he knows even the chassis numbers, the history on the cars.
Yep.
So he was. As soon as we started discussing this project, he's the first person that came to mind because he's so knowledgeable. And it's hard to find people who actually race these cars in the 50s now. Mm-hmm. It's even Alwyn Springer. He didn't start until the 60s, the mid 60s. So it's good that Cam has spent so much time restoring these cars that he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, and it's a family affair, obviously. Mr. Ingram, Mr. Bobby Ingram, and him, Cam and Rory, and yeah, it's they're very well respected in the industry, and the amount of knowledge they have is unsurpassed.
Yeah, and we saw some possibilities for other panorama stories or videos. So he took me over while Damon was filming the cars after the interview. He walked me over to the collection, the family collection, I guess you could call it. And, he was pointing out a lot of cars and their stories, and they were great panorama stories. So, and projects they're working on currently right now that would be they restore. I think he said 2 or 2.5 cars a year. That's what they average.
Wow.
Yeah, it's and you could tell. And what my first thought was, why I may never own a 356, was the amount of labor to fix correctly rust.
Oh gosh.
If you got a regular, let's say a regular 56B coupe, no sunroof or anything, you got to start having a serious talk with yourself. Is it worth the price when it's all done?
Yeah.
Because they are there just hours and hours just making sure everything's perfect, and it's
it's
nothing
an art.
with body work is
art.
cheap, and this is and then they took me to where they rebuilt the 4-cam engines.
Oh.
And yeah, the nightmare as far as, because you can't go to Porsche Classic and buy tools to rebuild a 4-cam engine.
I think so. Alvin Springer was with us over the weekend, which we'll get into, but he was telling us that there are like 4 or 5 shops in the world that can rebuild a 4-cam.
Well, I think probably that have a good reputation,
or
has a
I could probably rebuild
that has a well-known reputation for rebuilding 4-cams. But I mean, just think of the value alone. I forgot, Manny, 4-cam engines. You said now.
I think they're about 300,000.
Yeah. So
wow,
and there aren't that many of them, and unfortunately, a lot of the knowledge from the people that were experts in 4-cam wasn't passed on.
Yeah.
That's the sad part.
I asked Simon, who was doing the rebuilding, I said, how many of these parts can you call Germany up and buy? And he was like, virtually none. We have to have them made. Yeah, everything. Even the tools. He showed me that he pulled out a bunch of tools. He said, these are tools that
he was talking about
had to have made. And
so you think a race car, you can pull everything apart and have tons of access, but he says he even had to modify a socket so that he could get a spark plug out, because there's no regular tool that you can use to get out in a 4-cam. I'm like, wow.
So we got to see, we knew we were going to meet the Ingrams again at VIR later on in the week, but we got to see how they prepped the cars, because they were getting the cars ready for their shakedown day at VIR, and then ultimately Rennsport. Everyone, like we saw at Canepa shop, everyone's got their target on Rennsport. After Rennsport, I think everyone's going to take a month off.
At least.
Yep.
All right, so back to Saturday before we headed down to VR. Did you do anything special?
I didn't do anything special. I helped a friend replace a coolant hose on his car and burp the coolant, and it seems like it's the year of car trouble. So yeah, I think we were talking about, when you have a garage and a lift, you want to work on your own cars, but then all your friends and family, hey, can you fix my car?
Actually, I suffer from that a lot. My brother drops off cars. My sister-in-law drops off cars. My aunts and uncles. In fact, this weekend I'll be changing, or I'm going to have Jonah do it. I'm going to have Jonah change the oil in his grandmother's CRV. So
nice.
So if he messes it up, you'll never be asked to do it again. Is that how it works?
Unfortunately, I never let it. I'm always supervising. I don't let it get to that point. But he needs to turn some wrenches and get his fingers dirty.
Yep, exactly.
All right, and then after Saturday evening, we all hopefully went to bed early, because we were at the office at 5 a.m. and climbed into a minivan and made
the official minivan of all rental car companies.
I love them. I love them. Chrysler Pacifica. I love them. I wouldn't own one, but I love them.
They're so horrible. I hate those cars. However, for filming or trips, you can deal with all the crappiness. My opinion.
You had a really bad one in Monterey, but most of the the these
it had a
Voyagers. Yeah, yours had an exhaust leak.
I thought, man, they really upped their game. With this, it was a newer model with a nicer touchscreen. Than it wasn't like 5 inches. It was pretty large. Then the exhaust sounded better than a lot of sports cars
because it had a hole in it.
And then Vu was a little more perceptive, and it's probably an exhaust loop.
I do try to get like one with the least amount of mileage when I rent them. I do look. But so we piled in and did what 5-hour trek to VIR from here.
Yeah, that early in the morning. It was on a Sunday. There was very little traffic going through Washington D.C.
Yeah, so the seniors of the group made the drive down, and
They stayed awake.
Yeah, so I did about an hour and a half or so, and then Manny, he was wide awake, so he drove. And our two young ones were hanging in there in the back,
Sleeping and reading the
I don't,
Economist.
know if I don't know if you can see that, Damon.
But they had a surfboard between them,
They had a
so it was all good.
No touching.
Yeah, but it was pouring down rain, so we were wondering, man, what will happen with the race? But thankfully, when we got to VIR for race day, it was actually pretty clear.
We timed it perfect because it didn't start pouring again until after the awards ceremony.
Yeah.
So why did we have a surfboard going to VIR?
Because it was raining so hard.
The Dan River is right next to the track.
So at I forget which parade it was. I think it was our
Boca.
It was Boca.
Boca
So
Parade.
2019?
At Boca Parade, Porsche Cars North America had a beautiful display with surfboards and such. And there's this is the Salzburg liveried surfboard that we have on display at the office here. Oops, sorry. And so they are building a special car that will be at Rennsport Union 7, and they wanted the surfboard to be part of the display.
Oh, nice.
So I've never shipped a surfboard, but
Did
I
you
was
ask him what kind of car?
no, I didn't. I just asked for the surfboard. What am I-
Well, that should be an exchange for taking the surfboard. You got to tell us what you're bringing.
So I was like, well, it sounds like an easy request, but shipping a surfboard is not exactly. I don't know how to do it. So I was thinking we would just fly it down, right? And then Kathy Lee from Porsche Cars North America, she was going to be at VIR. So I said, well, if we can take it down to her, then she can put it on the plane when she gets home. Because when we travel, I often see skis and stuff like that, and I figured the plane would be the safest way and the quickest way to get it down there.
It is. I bought a surfboard in Hawaii years ago and just took it on the plane back.
Yeah.
So this should be fine.
Yeah, and it worked out fine. I was a little nervous, but as soon as she landed, she called me and she said, "Made it, no problem." So
I'm picturing Kathy with PCNA, down in Florida, on the waves surfing right now.
No.
Maybe not right now. It's probably a little bit.
No.
I think the hurricane's coming through, but
yeah. I'm sure they're gonna do some sort of Salzburg livery, some kind of car, and have that on top of it. It'll look cool.
Yep.
All right. So once we got down there, Porscheplatz was already popping. They were open, I believe, Friday and Saturday.
Yes.
So we were there Sunday. Shout out to all the Zone 2 volunteers, Lynn Friedman, and of course Kathy Lee. They had everything pretty much set up. For those that don't know what a Porscheplatz is, maybe Manny, you can share with them what goes on there.
Well, it's a great benefit of membership. You even if you don't have a parking pass to bring your car in, and you just fly in, let's say, like us, drove a non-Porsche, you're so welcome to come into the Porscheplatz, which is a hospitality tent. They usually have soda, water, no food, but soda, water. They have plenty of seating. They have TVs that show the race. They do presentations, which means they always bring the factory teams in to talk. They usually bring Michelin engineers to talk about the race. They'll bring IMSA safety officials to talk about what they do. So they have a whole schedule when you first walk in that is posted, or they have little pamphlets they'll give you, and they highlight in red what's going on at the plots, and you can come back and, it's a great place to sit down, to meet people, if you're meeting up with people and hang out, and it's all free.
Yeah.
It's all part of the membership and the relationship we have with Porsche. And they usually have it in a good spot, a good viewing spot. This time it was between turns 3 and 4 of VIR, and it was right in the middle of the action. We were right next to the paddock, so it wasn't a very far walk to get to pit lane if you wanted to. But it's almost at every IMSA race. We have a Porscheplatz, and I was very curious, and I wish I would have asked, but I couldn't find if our friends from Chevrolet and BMW had any tents. I saw the parking.
So BMW definitely had a tent because I went over there and said hi to my friends over there. Corvette, not so much. I didn't see a tent. They did have a parking
Because
corral.
at Road Atlanta, they're opposite of us. across the road on the other side of the bridge, you have a almost equal size turnout.
Yeah.
It looked like ours was filled, our lot. It looked like
Yeah,
because it usually sells out the Porscheplatz parking, that's something you do have to pay for, but you get the closest parking you can. But VIR, if you've never been there, it's like a golf course that they built a racetrack on, and they actually built it in the 50s, rehabbed it about I'm going to say 20 years ago. And it is just absolutely beautiful. It's rolling hills. It has tons of elevation changes. It's a track that they would never build today because of safety reasons. But it's also the site of where the first ever IMSA race was run in 1970 that Peter Gregg and Hurley Haywood won in a 914.6 GT.
Oh, wow.
Certainly one of my favorite tracks to drive on. And as part of the parking in the corral that weekend, you have an opportunity for parade laps. And what Manny and I love to do is we love to hitch a ride. So they lined up, I think, 100, 120 cars, and we just kind of went down the row. And I got to ride in a Black Edition 987. You rode in like a SC or something, Manny?
I rode in an 85, I think,
Oh,
Carrera.
okay, 85 Carrera. And so you line up there. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the lineup of cars. And it's, when you hear parade lap, you think, is it really that fun? I would encourage you, even parade lap speeds, to be able to see the track from a racer's point of view and look at, feel the elevation and such. You never know if you're going to get 1, 2, 3 laps, because depending on the timing, if they run late or whatever, at minimum you're going to get 1. But on Sunday they got 3 amazing laps, and the gentleman that I was riding with, he had never driven VIR before, and he had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just walked up and introduced myself and said, "Do you have a passenger?" He said, "No," and I said, "Do you mind if I hop along?" He said, "Sure." It was Dave Nowitzki. He had I think it was an 85 Carrera. He also had a 996, but beautiful white with the tail. And anyways, he had driven the track before, so I was telling him, I used to club race here for over a decade, and so instinctively, having instructed for so many years, I started giving him hints because I could tell he was missing some apexes, even though we're not going super fast.
Right.
But it's just naturally you just want to take the line when you're driving, even a parade lap.
I was exactly the same way. So usually in parade laps, people just follow the car in front of them, and most people on parade laps have never driven a track, and they're like way offline. So of course I asked the guys, like, "Are you interested in driving the line? Because I've driven here a couple of times." And he's like, "Sure." And we made sure we gave each car in front of us and behind us enough space, so to speak. And his eyeball just got large. He's like, "Man, this is so much fun." He's like, "I've done DEs before, but I've never driven the line at VIR." And for us to be able to do 3 laps, I mean, we were cooking on the back straight.
That's a big track, too. It's not like Lime Rock. It's
a
very big track.
I mean, they were cooking on the back straight there.
But within PCA guidelines.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, there was no helmets or anything like that, so super safe. Yep. And then, let's see, we helped break down the Porscheplatz, and it's, again, thank you to all the volunteers, because once everybody leaves, there's a lot of stuff to pack up and get ready to put on the trucks and get it to the next event. And there's a very specific order at which things goes in packaging, so that when you get to the next destination, unpacking it, everything will be just as efficient. So thank you to our volunteers for doing that.
You're going to gloss over the 200 cookies you took?
Oh my gosh! So,
which I noticed
he
most of them are
probably
gone
forgot
now.
to bring them in.
No,
I'm gone one day. How many did you keep at home?
I got like a dozen. I brought them. They're on the
That's as many snickerdoodles as were in there.
Well, here's what happened. So what he's referring to is we were actually next to I think an IMSA VIP, whatever,
yes.
And they were closing down at the same time, and they had 2 trays of untouched wrapped cookies. And Lynn is famous for feeding what are those things in Monterey? The little ground squirrels, the
chipmunks.
The chipmunks in Monterey. So she's always like, we don't like things to go to waste. So she comes over with 2 trays of cookies. She's like, You're our ground squirrels, so figure out what to do with these. And of course, I'm not going to say no. And once, especially when I took one to try, they were like delicious cookies. So we transported them back, and then not last night, but the night before. I put them in Ziploc bags and brought them into the office.
They were going to throw away a lot of fruit too.
I know.
I felt bad about that.
I felt bad. There was so much food that they were throwing away. Ugh.
Like Don saw me eating blueberries. He goes, "Where'd you get that?" I go, "From the trash."
No.
And he looked at me. I'm like, "No, seriously." I said, "They're untouched." They're
It wasn't
in
trash.
plastic
They
containers.
were putting it away to be taking it away, not like you weren't going through a dumpster. I mean, we got.
Hey, we're not
too proud.
Yeah. If I saw some fresh Hoosiers in there, I'd be conniving.
Well, single use Hoosiers, I'll take them. But really, the opportunity for us to come down there was to be together with the Ingrams and the Ingram Experience, and maybe share with them what the Ingram Experience at VIR is all about.
Well, he had different experiences, but like on Sunday, or the whole weekend rather, for the IMSA race, it's basically hospitality. It's if you want to experience a race at a higher level, then you spend a little bit more, and you're treated like a VIP, first class. They take care of. They rented the whole South Course building, which is a pretty sizable building, which had great views from the second floor. They had lounge chairs set up with canopies in the shade, their own parking, and they had speakers coming to the building. They invited Alvin Springer, who's the co-grand marshal for Rennsport Reunion, him and his wife Yolanda, to the event, and they stayed, and he gave us some talks about his career in motorsports. And it's just everything's first class. They didn't have to wait in the barbecue sandwich line that we had to.
Right.
And on top of that, not only is Alvin Springer walking around and you can, say hi and talk with him and pick his brain about all the Porsche history that he was a part of, but there's also literal Porsche history sitting right there, So if you're part of the Ingram Experience, they'll be bringing cars like their 550 Spider. They had a 906, the L2 Gray 906 with the stripes. They had a 74 Carrera RS, a 918 Spider in that deep purple. I believe it's a one of one. So there's a lot there.
Viola Metallic.
Viola Metallic?
Yeah,
That's the one that Bob Ingram made that color up, and it was his color for a whole year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So here's the thing with VIR. They have beautiful accommodations like hotels, and even we stayed. Manny had a great idea because we stayed overnight on Sunday, and he said, "Why don't we stay at the track?" And I've stayed at the little rooms above the garage right on the front straight, but it was very, very, very basic when we stayed probably a decade ago. And the prices were actually very reasonable because it was Sunday. Everybody was leaving, and it's basically empty. And they've actually upgraded it, so it was really nice. And we did what we did back in the day. Like, we bunked up. He had a bed, I had a bed, and you and Boggs shared a room. But it was really nice accommodations in that sense. But unlike other tracks, there aren't a lot of hospitality buildings at VIR. So this Ingram Experience, offers that for someone that has been to, say, Daytona or Sebring, where there's just lots of buildings where you can have air conditioning, you can still see the track, and have a more upscale experience. So I think they're tapping into something that's probably going to be pretty popular.
Oh yeah, Rennsport Reunion. Everyone wants hospitality.
Right.
They want to pay extra for the experience, and that's part of with Kathy Lee and Philip that type of marketing they do is it's just more than the cars, it's the experience. So, and then they also do track days. So it's very limited, obviously, the amount of cars that are in. So you're also treated VIP at the track day. So if you're willing to spend more and that's what you're looking for, then they fill that need.
And the whole reason why we were there is Rory reached out to us. They've got to do a shakedown on a number of the cars that they're taking to Rennsport. And it makes sense, but you don't really think about it, right? Like, all these cars that are coming to Rennsport, a good number of them have probably just been sitting in a collection and not necessarily been driven and tested and such. And you don't know what's going to happen when you kind of waken these cars up. And you don't want to be the first time you wake these cars up when you're at Rennsport. So smartly, they are doing that, or they were doing that at VIR. And guess what? Things came up. Like, they didn't, they had to tweak the idle, or they had a wheel bearing they had to tighten up, or something. And I think smartly, that's a great way to prepare for such an amazing event at Rennsport, is to do the shakedown on all these cars.
Yeah, Joe, legendary Porsche factory driver, former Porsche factory driver Joe Bazetta, his son was there to drive an Elva Porsche that his dad drove back in the day. His dad, when he drove it, had a 4-cam flat 4, but it had a flat 6 this time. But this was the first time Bazetta Jr. had driven it. And
in the wet.
In the wet when it was raining.
Okay,
this is a 985-pound race car.
Let's set the stage for people that are listening. What an Elva Porsche is. Yeah. This thing is barely larger than a go-kart. I mean, it really is.
Well, it's a little bit bigger than a go-kart. It's like a 550 Spider.
2 go-karts.
But it originally, like Damon said, it had a 4-cam, which was 190 horsepower. Now it has a flat 6 2.7, so it's pumping a lot more horsepower. And back in the day when it had just the 4-cam, it was devious. I mean, if you read the history, there were the factory drivers from Germany who drove it once and said they'll never drive it again. That they would rather compete in the fatter RS60s than to risk their lives in this
That's
car.
funny to say that an RS60 is a fatter one, because an
compared
RS60
to the Elva.
Compared to the Elva, it certainly is.
So
but
Elva was the chassis was a British manufacturer, and it was very lightweight, and supposedly over a couple of beers bench racing, some people had the idea of, hey, let's take this chassis and stick a Porsche engine in it, and that's what they did, and it became for people who could tame it. It was a very competitive ride, but it was a long way to get there, and I think his son was discovering that, because I can only imagine how scary that must have been to drive, because you have no PSM, you have no safety features in that car.
And not only that, your behind is literally, 3 inches off of the ground, so you know how when you're low, things just seem that much faster. Lightweight car, tons of horsepower, your behind is on the ground, and you're on a track like VIR, like that. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, it's raining. That's got to be terrifying.
So it's raining. He comes in. There's some problem. The caliper stuck or something. So they the mechanics that Road Scholars had brought jacked the front of the car up. And they're looking around, and they figured out it was the front left wheel was sticking, and
the wheel bearing. The wheel bearing was loose, and it was pushing against the caliper.
And it was that wheel was wiggling like at least an inch in either direction. Yeah. And so I'm thinking, oh my God! And he was out there doing that in the rain for the first time ever, and probably a car that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But
so it's one of a kind. I mean, there's not many Elva Porsches around anymore.
So they lifted the bodywork off, and so we were able to get a look at what are the bones of this car. And 1, your feet are basically even with the front axle.
Yep.
2, the steering column is like a spear ready to impale you if you get in any sort of front end crash. Like, it's just, there's no brake. It's just one long spear, and if you hit something,
that was motorsports back in the day.
Oh my gosh,
it was a tough era to go racing. We try not to talk about that when you look at the car, especially when the driver's standing there. Yeah. But Manny was kind of in his element, because I will be honest, a lot of these cars, I know what they are, but I don't know the history of them. And it was awesome to have Manny walk us around and talk about, I knew it was a 4-cam, but I didn't realize they put a 6-cylinder in it. I didn't know that, and
Joe Bazetta, I remember seeing him. I probably have his autograph from one of the Rennsports.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a factory driver, American factory driver for 4 years, from 66 to 70, or late 69. And, he went from driving, he drove everything. And back then, everything that was put in front of him, he would drive. While that wasn't his only career, he was opening up car dealerships in, I think, Long Island. And so he was very well known in the American racing scene, because he was such a good driver. And I looked at his son. I'm like, you look just like photos of your dad.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, you would have told me that was Joe Bazetta, I would have to process the fact that he should have looked a lot older from what I remember seeing him like 20 years ago at Rennsport. But and I remember he seemed to love to have a great time. The father, people remembering. You could hear everybody saying, "I saw you race at Bridgehampton. I saw you race here." So it was pretty cool to see that little bit of history come back to life.
Mm-hmm. So you actually was probably very excited for one car that you thought you'd never see, and you even brought your little model with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 906E, which E is for injection.
Robert,
Rhodes
that's
Scholar,
the black and yellow car, Robert.
the Rhodes Scholars restored, and it was on the lawn of Pebble Beach a week prior, and then here it was in front of us at the track. It was, and if you're watching the YouTube version of our podcast, that is all tape,
Yep, and that's
not paint. It's all tape.
That's how they did it.
And that's and they did that because they actually just happened to have black and yellow tape, on the toolbox.
And this isn't Rhodes Scholars. Rhodes Scholars is copying what they did
what
back
they did back in the
day.
day. Yeah. I mean, it's not like they had a computer and designed some kind of fancy, livery. They said, we've got black tape, we've got yellow tape. Let's make this happen. And honestly, this car would have been what year again?
That would have 67.
67, man. It looks so cool. It looks very much, those of you, this might be before Damon's time, but remember Racer X from Speed Racer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if Racer X was to drive a car or drive a Porsche, that would be Racer X's Porsche.
Oh, there's the volunteer crew.
Yeah, it was very cool because, like I said, I bought that model, I think 20 years ago, and I didn't even know the car existed anymore. But I remember seeing photos of a race, and the whole purpose of that livery was to get attention, which they did.
It certainly does.
And then hearing the history of it, which I wasn't really familiar with the history, but how it went to South America after it ran in Europe and won the South American Endurance Championship under the same livery. So
The tape lasted that long, huh?
I asked them when you restored it, I said, did you have to go find the exact tape? I mean, because I know Rhodes Scholars, and they will fly to Germany, and how many times it doesn't matter to get the right information and to recreate everything the way it was originally.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's so cool. Now they shook that car down. I was too far in the back of the parade lap, but that car I think was one of the 4 or 5 cars that led the parade lap. So they did 3 laps at VR in that thing. But what I was really impressed was Cam was really shaking down the 904.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the rain.
In the
once
rain.
again.
And he was not like, just putzing around. Like he was the thing about where we were in the back straight, and if you know VIR, there's a couple of hills at the end of that straight. And because these cars are mostly unmuffled, you can tell when a driver lets up.
Yeah.
And he did not. I mean, he was from Oak Tree all the way to the second, the braking zone. I mean, you could hear he was just on it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. And what struck me was, and it encouraged me to start writing an article. I wrote an article about how to tell a replica speedster from a real one. And that article has been requoted so many times. And I'm going to do one for about the 904.
Oh, that'd be cool. 904
replicas aren't as plentiful as speedsters, they still pop up, and we have one in our region that Chip owns, and it's a beautiful car. Whenever it comes to Cars and Coffee, people just gather around it, and it's funny because a lot of people come up and they go, "I've never seen a real one," and I always got to say, "Well, you still have it.
You still have it."
Is that one of the Beck replicas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beck,
Which I have to say, I think they lengthened the wheelbase slightly
and make it wider.
Widened it.
You can tell when I was looking at the Ingrams 904.
Yep.
I said, I'm gonna get the measurements. I'm sure they have it online and see, because I remember Chip telling me they make it wider and longer so it drives better and it's more comfortable.
Yeah.
And it still looks really good.
No, I mean, unless
it's parked next to one.
Then that's when you can really tell when they're parked next to each other. But I told somebody, I said Beck's 550 and the 904 are probably the only 2 replicas I'd ever own because they're so accurate and
well done,
and much less expensive than the real thing. But having the real thing in front of us at VIR was really special. And like you said, watching Cam get in there in the rain, and I asked him, I said, "What about the tires? Are they, because you hear that these vintage-looking tires have modern rubber." And he was like, "It's still really scary." He said it's very narrow. It has huge sidewalls on it.
and he says it folds over.
Yeah.
He said it's a lot of drifting to get around the corners.
And holding him in place while he's drifting is the original seat.
Yes.
Remember, he took that out? And it's
he
the
took
original,
it out like you're taking a piece of bubble gum out of a wrapper.
It's not latched into anything. It just sits in the little...
there's like a receiving... match to
concave
to the seat, but there's actually in the middle of the seat there is not a rail, but the way they designed it, when you throw it into that recess, the rail lines up with the rail that's the recess in the seat, so it locks into place when you're sitting down on it.
Yep.
But there's no adjustments of going forward or backward, and it's the original velour. It's the original coconut. He said it was
Coconut fiber.
Coconut fiber.
It's stuffed with.
Yep, and it's all
Which apparently is what gives those cars their smell on the inside a little bit.
Yeah.
He was saying, right? Is that coconut?
So I guess like when he was driving in the rain, yes, it had wipers, but defrost, he said it was like going up Pikes Peak because your windows was fogging up, and I guess he's using his gloves to.
That's even, heck, that's even with the old 911s.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. A car that was, I think, born in around the Potomac region quite a bit, and I've never seen this one in person, but it is striking because it's red with yellow stripes, and it says Electrodyne.
Oh, the 944 GTR.
I've never seen that car. That is not really a 944. I mean, it's a 944 in some ways, but that thing is like tubular chassis, wide.
So there's a, for those who don't know, there's a fabricator named Fabcar, Dave Klim, and he was actually authorized from the factory to build 962.
Hold on one second, Robert, for the YouTube viewers, that's the red car. There it is. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Dave Klim was authorized to build 962 bodies and the monocoque and everything, and he built so many Porsche race cars. So he actually built these 944 GTRs per spec from the factory, and I had not seen this car in a long time.
And that's all fiberglass over a tube chassis.
Well, so it's but it's I think the original body part, the rear part, I think is still the original.
It looked like fiberglass to me.
I'm talking about not the overhang, not the
like where the
where
bumper and the lights are.
where the lights are. And I think that's still the.
I don't know.
There's a little bit of originality. Right?
I think the taillights are. I think the taillights are the only thing that's real on that
The
car.
engine says Porsche on it. I'm guessing that's just a highly modified.
2.5 turbocharged. Yeah, it's.
It doesn't even sound like a 944
The
turbo
best
engine.
is seeing the flames come out of the side of it. That was so cool. And there's this if you're watching on YouTube, there's a silver knob kind of in the middle of the photo there, and that's the fun knob. Boost.
That's what they were. Looking into the windows, Alan Springer, whose Andal built that engine probably like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was giving advice on how because they were having trouble getting boost. Something was wrong. Mm-hmm. So it was amazing watching mechanics listening. It was like listening to the Pope.
Yeah.
They were very
yes, sir.
quiet and respectful, and with a lot of reverence, listening to anything that Alwyn said that could help them. And he even asked him for a piece of paper, and he drew him a diagram, and then gave him his phone number, and he said, "Try this out, and let me know. Call me, and I'll."
He still got it.
Yeah,
for sure.
He doesn't get into the race cars, he said, but he'll make them go faster.
And here's the thing: is when they were trying to figure it out themselves, they were saying, "Could it be this? Could it be that?" And Alan says, "Let's not focus on what it could be. Let's start from A and go to Z. And when you start from A and you go to Z, you will find what's wrong. Don't assume or don't guess." And it was really an honor to watch him grab a wrench and just kind of look through from, like I said, from A to Z. And he did something to the blow-off valve, and they took it out, and they found out the turbos were building boost. So it wasn't the bad turbo. So again, he was very methodical about it, and it was an honor to watch him go through it.
Yeah, and that car is also being that's a Colin Doherty from Dow Sport and CDOC. He is getting the car ready for Rennsport as well.
All right. So let's use this to remind people to sign up at PCA's website for the various e-newsletters we have. Robert, if you'll throw those up. So sign up for e-brake news, Mart Fresh news, performance news. Just simply go to pca.org, and you'll get a lot of great PCA and Porsche information delivered to your inbox.
It's all free, too.
All free. Speaking of free, how about the YouTube videos that recently went up?
So it's funny. I see in our agenda here that we're going to be talking about the Works video, which I feel like that was ages ago.
I
when
looked.
we
I
published
said,
that.
we didn't talk about it the last podcast. Something because it felt like we talked about it, but I'm like, no, we didn't.
Yeah. So, much like we did the video at Parade at the Concours, which right now has over 30,000 views. So one of our better recent videos, we decided to do something very similar at Works. So Manny directed, went out and picked a bunch of cars for me to go film B-roll of that we would grab Vu and go on a walk around. And this time we focused, or I should say Manny focused on the crazy Porsche colors that were at the show. And I think just by focusing on the crazy colors, we got a pretty wide variety of mostly 911s. But what did we have? A 77 or 76 on steel wheels.
Yeah, the 912
Moss green. Graham Rahal had his shark blue Dakar and his amethyst metallic Carrera GT.
Oh, Carrera GT, that's
with
right.
the HRE wheels. Lime green, which I've watched the video a couple times since we published, but that lime green Carrera RS, that is the greenest car I have ever seen. It like makes the whole screen look green.
Yeah.
Like,
so I want to thank you guys because for those of you that don't know, when we're at an event such as Parade or Works Reunion, we are really focused on running the event. And in order for us to do a video like this in the middle of it all, Manny and Damon go through a lot of planning to go pick out the cars, kind of set the stage, and then luckily for me,
Damon has to do a lot of B-roll.
A lot of B-roll.
Took a little longer than I thought it would.
In hopes that later when he edits, he'll go, did I get that shot? Did I get that shot?
Exactly.
And more often than not, he does. And, they pull me off stage and we really shoot this in not even 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But because all the preparations they did with it, it comes out to being something that hopefully you enjoy, because the whole idea why we do this, or the reason why we do this, is because we know not everyone gets to our events, but you can get a little bit of a feel and flavor and highlight of the event. And I think that's why it's so popular, right? Because people go, I heard about Works Reunion, but what was there? How is it different this year, and all that kind of stuff.
I like to think it's my video skills have gotten better, but I've got a feeling it's the
but
substance of the.
No, it is. Your video skills have gotten better because you're planning more. You're better equipment. The audio is better.
Yeah.
We're kind of a one-stop shop. We don't have a video crew. We don't have a dedicated group that does that. This is all of us pitching in to deliver this stuff to you all. So hopefully you enjoy it. And if you are, I'm going to plug, please. We're almost to 80,000 subscribers, and of course, we're heading to 100,000. That's our big goal. Because then we get the official YouTube plaque. So hopefully we'll get there soon. But each and every one of you can help us get there.
We actually passed a pretty big milestone 3 days ago. 10 million views on our channel since, what was it, February 15th, 2010 is when it was started.
Wow.
10 million views.
Very cool.
So
you also threw up a 1 mile review. I think it was a 997.
Yep, 997, 2011, so 997.2, the facelift, mid-cycle update car, 2011 Carrera 4S, and 997.2s, they're great cars. If a lot of people think they're the sort of the definitive water-cooled 911 when it comes to size, to shape, the controversial headlights of the previous generation, and the 997.2 does all that, but then takes the engine. Porsche took the engine and made a lot of improvements to it to increase reliability and make a little more power. And what's crazy is I drove several 997.2s and one early 997 that day. The Carrera 4S has like some sort of a special sauce. And I've always heard that about the Carrera 4S, starting with the 996 generation. Like you would think all-wheel drive 911 is not the one you want for performance. And granted, I didn't have a very twisty road or many turns at all, but you can just feel it. It's tighter. It doesn't feel all-wheel drive. It feels rear-wheel drive, at least in the situations I was driving it in. It's just a really solid car. And, you can't go wrong with one of those. And if you're considering a Carrera S, don't rule out a Carrera 4S of that generation, because you might be surprised. It's not like I think the 964 Carrera 4, maybe the all-wheel drive system wasn't quite as performance-oriented as the 993 and later models. And you can definitely tell. The 4S is a special car.
What's interesting is we've talked about this quite a bit amongst ourselves here at the office. The 997.2s are really around the same price range of early 991s.
Yeah.
Why is that, and what would you buy?
If you gave me a 991, whether it was a .1 or a .2, and put it up against a 997.2, and they were roughly the same price, and they were, let's say, the model that, like, Carrera S versus Carrera S, or 4S versus 4S, I would go 997.
Really?
I like, to me, 997s, they're less rear engine feeling than the .1 997s, and even less rear engine feeling than the 996 cars. They just, Porsche engineered, and really fine-tuned the handling so that they were very balanced. But as soon as you go from 997.2 to a 991, you realize that the 997 generation is very rear engine feeling, because after that they lengthened the wheelbase, I believe they widened the front track, so it's
more of a GT
really
car.
stable, and it's more GT car like.
Yeah.
997.2 is kind of, for me, the last 911 that really has that mid-engine feeling, even if you're not pushing it really hard.
How about you, Manny?
I would pick a manual 997 over a manual 991.
I would agree with that.
Probably pick a PDK 991 over a stick shift 997. I mean, it's an incredible car, and I like small cars, and, and Damon's right. The 997 is for a lot of people, the perfect size. I love it. I think it's perfect. But if we're talking the same price, like we started a conversation, that would be a tough one.
The 992 interior, and we don't often talk about interiors. So nice,
really
so nice compared
991,
to
you mean?
I'm sorry, 991.
Well,
interior.
both 991 and 2.
Yeah.
Before I forget, so you mentioned, I forgot to mention that this Carrera 4S, this .2, was PDK. And as I had said, I'd driven other .2s with PDK. This one had Sport Chrono, or actually Sport Chrono and Sport Chrono Plus. It makes a huge difference with shift quality and shift speed with PDK on the 997.2 generation. And a car that doesn't have Sport Chrono, it shifts quickly, better than probably most dual clutch transmissions even nowadays, but you can tell Porsche's really moved on. But if you get Sport Chrono and you press the Sport or the Sport Plus button, totally changes the character.
Of the car.
I don't think I would want PDK unless it had Sport Chrono from that generation.
Interesting.
So that's something to keep in mind as well.
The 997 was still using a 6-speed manual.
Yep,
They
6-speed
had
manual.
switched to the 991 used a PDK manual essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as shifting and transmission, I love the 997 manual. I wish they would have kept that kind of feel on the 991 manual.
Yeah, there's some trickery going on with the
And the
991s.
991 introduces the 7th gear.
Well, it's basically a PDK transmission for manual. It's
And there's some electronic wizardry going on. So because if you just took the PDK gearbox in a 991 and there was no, I'll just call it the wizardry going on, up and to the left is first, but, where second usually is might be fourth, and, second
I
might
see.
be up over
I
in
never
the top
had the
left.
connected feeling. I didn't feel
Yeah.
like there was a cable as I was moving the gears. It was more electronic.
So Porsche does a lot of work so that, to make the PDK work as a manual. And so first is where it usually is, second is where
I think it
usually
also
is.
depends on what you're planning to do with the car. If you're touring, you want to row your own gears and stuff like that. Like, I totally get it, but I'm tired of being. I love the advantage of a PDK at an autocross. Like I listen to the PDK cars at an autocross and I go, man, I really need that speed. I really need how
But
quickly they're
you
shifting.
wouldn't base your car purchase on the one time a year that you drive 3 minutes.
Well, the thing is, I have manual cars, right? But I don't have a PDK car, so I would like a PDK car, so I could have that experience at an autocross too. But it does great things as well. And like I said, I do love the 991 interior. I think the 991 exterior, although it's larger and and such, man, people are going to kill me for saying this, but I like the 991 look better than the 997.
How could you? Come on.
I know. I'm
999
sorry. I'm sorry. It's just it looks more elegant and more modern, because it is. It is more
I
modern.
see that.
But I
more GT car-ish.
yeah.
Luckily, I don't have to make the decision because the way my garage is set up, I cannot take any bigger cars.
Oh, well, you have what, like half an inch between cars?
That's what I mean. I can't even take a 996, I think, because it's wider than my 964.
You've put 3 cars in a 2-car garage.
Yes, and it's only possible because it's a 914, a 964, and a 987 is a fat one.
I think that would be a great video of seeing how Manny not only puts the 3 cars into a 2-car garage, but I still don't know how he gets out of the last car he puts in.
No, that's easy. That's easy.
Is it really?
Sunroof?
There's plenty of room.
Oh.
But my wife has her screensaver on her phone is the time that I parked. Like, I'm not lying. There was a 1/4 inch between each fender.
Oh, jeez.
And she almost had a heart attack. 'Cause I think you could maybe less, maybe 1/8 inch. But the way I do it is I have a piece of inch foam in between the two, and that's my safety measure, my net, if you will. But I've done it so many times that
Hey.
it's not a big deal anymore.
You got to do what you got to do to get those cars inside.
Yep.
All right. And thank you so much for getting
PMB, right?
the PMB video. So I went to visit Eric at PMB. I think I was taking Justine out to college or something like that. And
PMB is they specialize in brakes.
yeah.
What does it stand for?
I don't know, actually. That's I should.
I did ask him, but I don't recall now. And actually, I believe it has to do with some sort of
Performance something brakes.
No,
I don't know.
I want to say Porsche, Mercedes, BMW.
Okay, that would make sense.
Or something like that. Eric will have to share.
Yeah.
He did tell me, and I apologize, I don't remember. But anyways, here's a guy that needed some brakes for his 914. He was a professional in a totally different industry, and he was restoring a car, and he figured out how to rejuvenate 914 calipers, and he threw them up on 914 World, and people were so impressed. He got like 6 orders, and next thing you know, he's cranking these out in his garage.
And that's because 914 calipers, apparently, as I've been learning, work totally different from basically any other Porsche brake caliper.
The rear ones are different. The rears
yeah.
are different. The fronts are kind of the same.
Yeah.
But these are all steel brakes, and as these cars get older, it's harder to find restored, or if you needed to rebuild them yourselves. Not everybody can do it or do it correctly, and he uses the factory Porsche seals and such. But so I was so amazed. Me, my background is in logistics, and I love how things are made, or how things are done. And so he gave me a tour, and I said, I've got to capture this. And Justine had to do something at school. I was like, you know what? I'm going to drive out and visit Eric and take a set of microphones.
What's that comedian he looks like? He looks like, and it's the tip of my tongue.
I don't know.
It's going to hit me after the
After the show, I'm sure he'll tell you who everybody says he is. But the process in which they take the calipers apart and then clean them and then chromate them, it's
zinc plate.
Zinc plate, yeah. To do it right, man, it is a process. So hopefully you've caught that on YouTube and you'll enjoy that video. And I shot that with your editing labor in mind, and I kind of took everything in order.
Yeah, that was an easy video. I think that because of how you shot it, it only took. So I spent like an hour on Sunday evening, and then 2.5 hours yesterday.
Yeah, and they came out perfect.
It was done, yeah.
They came out perfect. So kudos.
What I learned from that when he sent us the video to review before it posted was I'm not going to try to redo my brakes.
Yeah,
I mean the way because you look YouTube and you're like, yeah, just buy the stencils from eBay and spray it and it'll look good and new. And then I watch this and I'm like, the way I like things to be almost factory like.
Yeah.
And even even the painted calipers to do it right, meaning cleaning it properly and putting new seals.
So one of the comments on YouTube was, how come you don't do core exchanges on the the Brembo, the aluminum calipers? And so the steel ones, the cores it's steel, it's usually robust and nothing has gone wrong with them, and they do core exchanges for those, but they don't do it for the aluminum ones, because the aluminum ones oftentimes, maybe they did it before, they're warped, and they might send you out a perfect set and then you send them a junk set and then they got to chase that down, blah, 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 blah. But the process for restoring the steel brakes is quite different from the aluminum, because you want to keep I forget what the coating is for the aluminum brakes.
Yeah, so it's the steel brakes are zinc plated, and then that's it.
Right.
The painted brakes, so basically starting with the 4-piston Brembos on the 944 turbo, and then going later on the cars with the fixed Brembo brakes, the aluminum is anodized, and then they're painted and clear coated. Unless, apparently, I also just learned, unless you have an early 944 turbo, it's not painted, it's just anodized and then clear coated, and then the bolts and hardware are zinc plated, which that's a beautiful brake caliper.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they maintain that. It's important to maintain the anodized finish to protect.
Yeah, they don't
aluminum.
anodize it. They keep the
anodized. Yeah. And I'm sure there's other companies out there that strip the anodized and put a fresh coat of paint, which may look good, for several months or something like that. But ideally, watch the video and you'll learn why you need to keep the anodized.
I'm glad when I rebuilt my brakes, I just went as far as the seals, and all the regular.
You didn't mess with the finish.
I was not going to mess with the finish. I'm glad I didn't after seeing that video.
All right, so let's get into some news. First news item we have here is Lightning McQueen and Sally are going to reunite.
Yes, this made our events manager, Melanie, very happy since she was hoping to have these at the Porscheplatz. But I think I told her, I said, someone from Germany heard what you were saying and decided they wanted that in the main paddock. I guess that's where it's going to be. But yes, they're going. This may sound comical, but it's actually really rare to have these two cars together in one place because they're owned by two different people. And so you're going to have Lightning McQueen and Sally Carrera. They're actual cars that were built based on the show. And
Sally Carrera runs and drives too.
Yeah,
yes,
so
it's a 996.
I don't know if
0.2, right?
So interesting enough, so Sally Carrera's headlights are 996.2s, but Sally Carrera chassis is actually 996.1. That was chopped. The next news item we have is kind of in my land is the 60 years of 911 Pumas.
Yes.
For me, there's two. So there's the walking shoe to the left there, which is kind of similar to the PCA Pumas, which are good for walking, but not so much for driving because the heels stick out so much. But the driving shoe, which I like, the blue over tan, that's a sporty driving shoe.
Yes, I like that one. That's more of my speed.
And I think they're limited to like 1963, I guess, pieces. So they'll probably sell out pretty quickly. So go to Porsche Design if you want to find out the drop dead, not drop dead date, but the drop date. And let's see. Next we have the Turbo Cabriolet spy video on track at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, I thought this was also, I don't know, we also have the GT2 RS spy video. I'm not sure if I sent that one to Robert or not, but yeah, obviously it seems weird that we had just have a turbo come out or a GT3 come out and you're already seeing spy videos of the next generation models, but Porsche keeps on building the cars, and a lot of it revolves around aero.
Yeah.
Once again, it's not huge horsepower changes, but. And it's also, would love to be if they would show like the spy shots for when the car's finally revealed against what they thought it was going to look like and what it actually looked like. Because Porsche is very good at hiding stuff and making you think they're going to do something and then changing it. Although the wing on the GT3 RS for the longest time, everyone thought that was just a prop.
Right.
That there was no way they were going to put a wing that big, but they did.
Yeah. And this car, especially being in black, it's hard to tell what's changed. The front fascia looks a bit different, but eagle eyes notice that the two tailpipes, the left and the right side, are not the same.
Yeah.
One is tubular and one is more kind of boxy looking, so maybe they're trying out different designs.
So it could be, if not this one, obviously maybe in a couple of years, but they're talking that the next turbo may be hybrid, which would be very interesting.
Yeah,
I would love to drive that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hybrid, the next news item is the recent announcement of the 2024 Cayenne Turbo E-Hybrid, and it's got staggering performance numbers. It's 729 horsepower, 700 pound-feet of torque. Interesting enough, it's not the fastest Cayenne because that title is still
The Turbo GT.
The Turbo GT, and I've got to imagine that's because of the weight of the battery.
But it is the second most powerful Porsche Porsche road car the company has ever made.
Yeah.
Short of a 918 Spider.
Some quick stats: 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60, 183 miles an hour. The battery in this one has more range than the previous editions. The interior is another thing to keep your eye on. Is the new dash is very Taycan-like. Yeah,
I almost have to get that extra screen, which I think is optional.
Yeah.
Maybe standard on this car. I don't know, but
it's still
you'd have to get the full screen effect.
It's still a twin turbo V8. So twin turbo V8 plus the electric motor. Man,
591 horsepower from the V8, which Porsche's revised pretty extensively from what they said in the press release, and then 174 horsepower electric motor.
Yeah, it's got. We've driven the Turbo GT and
Turbo SE hybrid Panamera. Some of that.
I mean,
they're insanely fast.
If you want your family to hustle around quickly,
Kids are late for school. This is what you need.
This is your ride, and I think we're being, I guess, trained to hear about six-figure numbers for cars. But to me, this one starts out at $150,000 for that kind of performance.
What a deal!
What a deal!
I'll still beat it at an autocross.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about some upcoming events. We still have, I think, we're going to have to close this out shortly, but we still have a few more spots for volunteers for Rennsport 7.
Yes, and remember, every volunteer, all you got to do is work one shift, and you get a T-shirt that only volunteers get, and you get the event poster from Porsche in a tube. And what better thing to have the signatures from legends than the event poster?
And we still have parade laps available?
Parade laps are still available. We're getting ready to probably sell out of those, but it's Thursday and Sunday. They're still available. They're all in the morning, so if you're planning to leave early on Sunday, you can still get the parade laps done because they happen at 7:30. So we weren't delayed by any on-track activity. Maybe, hopefully no fog, but the on-track activity won't be delayed because we're the first ones out.
And Manny, can you please reiterate, PCA sometimes is known as the Procrastinators Club of America, and we'll have some members calling up and say, hey, can we still get some corral tickets, or can you get my car in? And the answer is...
Yes, if it's for Rennsport 8. Rennsport 7 is sold out. It's been sold out for a long time.
The corral tickets.
My best advice is check the PCA Mart, check Rentless, check Pelican Parts Forum. I've seen them for sale. That people, obviously, when you're talking 1,800 corral tickets, there's going to be people whose plans have changed. So I'm starting to see a lot more tickets, a lot more corral passes for sale. But when you buy the corral pass, make sure it's for your car. Because just because you have a corral pass, if you show up with the Cayenne corral pass in your 911, guess what? You're not going to park at either one. You're going to be parking in general parking, which means outside the track, regardless of your corral pass. So make sure your corral pass matches the type of car you're bringing.
But there's still plenty of tickets for general attendance, and you can park in general parking.
Yep, plenty of tickets. I just wrote in a article for eBreak about 10 things not to miss or do. And the number one thing is as soon as Porsche announces the Rennsport Reunion app, which they think may come out the week before Rennsport, download it because that's going to be your savior for Rennsport because that's where it's going to be updated. Any schedule changes, what's going on, and there is a lot going on as opposed to last time. This time they got the schedule broken down into the Porscheplatz, the Porsche Park in the paddock, on-track stuff. It is going to be like Disney World as far as so many things to do and not enough time.
Speaking of not enough time, we need to sign off because we need to start cleaning this place for the open house, which also is sold out. So thanks for listening. If you aren't currently a PCA member and own a Porsche, head to pca.org with your VIN and get signed up. If you're looking for a Porsche, check out our test drive program. All the resources will be available to you so that you can find the right Porsche. Remember to follow our podcast Instagram page, behind the scenes photos, videos, Porsche Club Insider, all one word. Again, please give us a like or comment. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. And if you want to send us an email, send it to podcast@pca.org. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you down the road.